6 months after the tragic Danforth Ave shooting in Toronto gave Justin Trudeau's Liberals the political cover to explore a nationwide gun grab, the man responsible for overseeing this policy has not yet ruled out a full ban on handguns. Bill Blair is the Minister of Border Security and also the minister that Justin Trudeau is tasked with looking at whether we should ban assault weapons. This is what the Liberals think assault weapons are, not the actual assault weapons, which are already banned in Canada. And yes, a handgun ban. Now, Bill Blair has been notoriously difficult to actually be held accountable on this issue. There have been some invite-only events where gun advocates have been very frustrated. They've not been allowed to go to ask questions of this government. And most recently, Bill Blair had, to his credit, a town hall event co-hosted with a Conservative MP, Larry Miller, in Bruce Grey Owen Sound. People had the opportunity to raise their questions, to get an update on the government's and Bill Blair's progress on this. And what we got is very concerning. Now, to be clear, he is not yet committing to a full ban on handgun, but he is using language that people should be very wary of when he talks about quote-unquote secure storage.
We're looking very seriously at how we might make it more unlikely that those weapons will be stolen. How we create greater security around those firearms. And so we've examined a number of issues. This notion I've heard referenced a number of times of central storage. I've had proposals suggested to me in a number of jurisdictions that might work in that jurisdiction. But I also want to share with you that I've heard in many other places in Canada, people saying to me that that will not work here. And so it was important to go to those places, to listen to those people, to look at the circumstances.
Now, law-abiding firearms owners already have to do a lot to keep up with the regulations on storage. There are rules, depending on the classification of firearm, about how many locks it must be in, where the ammunition must be held. It has to be secure, and you have to be able to account for it. And quite frankly, police can show up at your house without a warrant and inspect to make sure you're following those rules. But one of the ideas that has been put forward is whether gun owners will be forced by law to store their firearms off-site, to keep your guns in a storage locker at a shooting range, at a gun club, rather than in your own home, where everything else that you own is. This is what it looks like Bill Blair may be talking about when he uses terms like secure storage. Now, as he notes, there is no legislation yet on the table. And it's not likely there will be any legislation on the table before the federal election. But if the Trudeau Liberals are re-elected, this is something that we could very well see. Why would secure storage be such a bad idea? Well, for starters, it gives the illusion that law-abiding gun owners are the problem, that it's actually the guns owned by me that are getting into the hands of criminals, which we know has been debunked time and time again. So that's one of the issues there, is that puts the onus on the people that are following the laws to deal with the problems from those who aren't following the laws. But more importantly, if we are trying to prevent criminals from stealing legally owned guns, why would we think it would be a good idea to make sure that every legally owned firearm is kept in one warehouse, in one storage facility? Kept all there in one room behind one door, so that if someone does actually want to steal guns, well, we know where they're all going to be kept. It's laughable to think this is a policy that would do anything other than detract from public safety if it had any impact whatsoever. Not to mention, most gun clubs most likely do not want the liability of having to safeguard everyone's firearms who happens to be a member there. If a gun is your property and you are following the rules and regulations as they've been laid out, you should not be penalized by the government. And Bill Blair's approach, once again, is to go after the law-abiding to give the illusion that gun control is something that he's making a priority. Well, gun control has been a priority in Canada. Gun control exists, it's on the books, and for the most part, Canadian gun control is effective. Adding more useless make-work regulations does nothing but penalize the people who are the least harm to Canadians, law-abiding gun owners. For True North, I'm Andrew Lutton.